I want to talk about life and how it changed in another garden. Because there are 3 gardens, and all of these 3 gardens have to be considered together. And the first garden is this, that life changed in the Garden of Eden. Life as you and I know it, and life as God intended, changed in the Garden of Eden. Now, many of you know this, but I want to go back to Genesis chapter 3 and look at this briefly. Genesis chapter 3, and look at what it says in verse number 1. Now the serpent, that's Satan, was more subtle than any beast of the field Lord had made. And he said to the woman, Yea, hath God said? Satan wants to plant doubt in your heart about God. And the first thing he will do is he will try to point out what God hasn't done, when God didn't show up, what God failed to do. And that's exactly what he does in this verse. He says, Yea, hath God said that you shall not eat of every tree in the garden? Well, of course God didn't say that. God said that they could eat of every tree of the garden. He was twisting what God said. God just said that there were 2 trees that they couldn't partake in, and there were 2 reasons why. Now, we don't know what these trees were. Some people say it was the peach tree and the apple tree. I don't know. It doesn't matter what tree it was. They represented 2 things. They represented knowing good and evil and trusting God with discerning good and evil, and the essence of life itself. And so God was saying, if you trust me with your life, if you trust me to sustain and to protect your life, and if you trust me with what is good and what is evil, I will be your guide. But if you would like, and of course God doesn't force anyone into a relationship with him, if you would like, you can define life and you can define good and evil on your own terms. And so when Adam and Eve looked at the tree that was the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they looked at this tree and they saw that the fruit was good to eat and that it would make them wise. And they took the fruit, and they took the fruit because they believed a lie. And by the way, every time Satan tries to get us to believe a lie, we can always say no. And here's the first lie that he told them when she said, well, if we eat of the fruit, we will die. And he says in verse 4, okay, so Genesis 3:4, he says, you will not surely die. Now we use the word surely for certainty, right? You will absolutely die. But this is the compound Hebrew word, matmuth, and it's the word for die quickly. He was saying, you're not going to die right away. You can eat those burgers. It'll take a year off your life, but it won't kill you right away. Right? I mean, you can do those dangerous things, and you probably won't die. The consequence was far removed. So he was saying, hey, you're not going to die right now. Now, there's a lot of people that push their luck. There's a lot of people who they live life on the edge. Have you ever met someone who lived life on the edge? I've met some people. In fact, I know some people. In fact, there's some people in this room who live life on the edge. Now, there's no one who lives life on the edge like this guy. He was driving down the road, drove down the wrong side of the road, and did this. Look at that. I mean, how much of a daredevil would you have to be to go into oncoming traffic just to slap a large animal? I want you to know, I'm from Iowa. That is not a recipe for life. That is a recipe for death, my friends. That is how to surely die. That is how to have death. Now, we all know we probably won't die right away doing dangerous things, but everyone in here is aware of something that we rarely talk about, and that is that death is certain. Everyone in here has a one-way ticket, and it ends in death. You say, well, why did God design it that way? He didn't. In fact, God designed life to be lived forever, and when sin entered in the world, death by sin. Death came into this world because Adam and Eve chose to define good and evil on their own terms and chose to be the sustainer of their own life. And God said, hey, if you want to step out of me sustaining, then you can sustain it as long as you want. And if you eat a really good diet, maybe, just maybe, you'll live a little bit longer. But life is now in your hands, and the knowledge of good and evil is in your hands. So when Jesus came out of that grave, Jesus, as Lee Strobel said, he did not come into this world to make bad people good. He came into this world to make dead people live. And so the life that Jesus brings is a life that we need because of the death that entered into the garden. You say, well, why would God bring this death to them? Listen, it was their choice. It was their choice to step out of the ideal life that God had given.